Barack Obama has spent so much money that if you went from the very first day that George Washington took office, and you take all of the debt accumulated from George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, go through every president, all the way up through that big spending George W. Bush, which he did spend too much. George Bush's last year in office, he spent $459 billion in debt that year. That was his worst year, when Barack Obama was running against that evil George Bush. What a big spender he was. But just think now, you take all the debt accumulated from the first day of George Washington, all the way through the debt accumulated from the debt that George W. Bush left office. Barack Obama spent more money in debt in 1 year than all previous 43 presidents combined. Does that give you perspective on what a big spending president this is, and how dangerous he is to the future and to the present of this economy? That should give us pause. And just for perspective for a moment, when you hear the words million, billion, trillion, it kind of all gets lost somewhere, doesn't it? It's hard to figure out what this really means. Take 1 million seconds. 1 million seconds equals 11 and a half days. 1 billion seconds are 32 years. 1 trillion seconds are 32,000 years. Now just consider, in George Bush's worst year ever of any president, any deficit, $459 billion, Barack Obama last year was $1.43 trillion in deficit. We've never seen numbers like that before. And this year is scheduled to be $1.6 trillion. And next year is supposed to be at least another trillion. And the year after that, and the year after that. Every year, an additional trillion in debt. In other words, it is planning for economic failure. The leading economists in the United States today are telling us that the United States is going into debt so quickly that within 10 years, our economy will be like Greece. That's how badly the spending is going. And we're talking about the greatest nation on earth. The greatest nation. The greatest military power. The greatest economic powerhouse. And it shows you how quickly you can fall if you don't get your house in order. That's why we don't have a choice this November. We have to elect constitutional conservatives who understand the treasure that is America, the treasure that's our heritage, the treasure that we want to pass on to this next generation. And we have to get a grip quickly, or else it's all gone. Well, President Obama made history all right between his czars, his pay czar, his auto czar, his health czar, his obsession with apologizing for the sins of America. Everywhere he goes across the earth, he's always apologizing for the United States of America, not bragging about what a great country we are, apologizing for the nation that we are. And then he foolishly is spending us into a debtor's prison, as I said, so much so that the Chinese are nervous about our dollar. Did you know that? Recently, the Chinese, the largest holders of our debt, did you know in World War II, we financed our own debt to finance World War II? We bought our own bonds. 0 U.S. debt was owned by any foreign country in the Second World War. Do you know that today, half of our debt is owned by foreign countries? We went from being the world's largest creditor to being the world's largest debtor. That's what happens when your main goal is to have a welfare state. That's what's happening under President Obama. Who remembers Joe the plumber? Remember what President Obama said? He just wanted to spread the wealth around. Well, he wants to take your wealth and spread it around. And he's not content to spread it around just to other Americans. He wants to spread it all across the world. He's a true believer in redistribution of wealth. I think he must have missed the first economics than the current President of the United States. They know enough that they can't spend more than what they take in. That's your first lesson of economics. Well, the Chinese recently dumped $34 billion of our debt because they were upset with what we were going to do with Taiwan. Don't think that this doesn't have national security implications when we are deep in debt with foreign countries. Also, it really is almost hilarious when you think the Chinese communists are busy lecturing us on how to keep our economic house in order. But that's exactly what they're doing. As a matter of fact, the Chinese now are also calling to change out the United States dollar as the international means of exchange. Did you know the Chinese, the Russians, Brazil, South America, nations all over the world now are calling for a new one world currency. Were you aware of that? This is the new effort now. Do you know what this will do to the dollar if there's a new international one world currency? Let alone the implications of that. Think about that for a moment. But also think about the implications of what that will do for demand for the dollar and how that will further weakening the dollar. These are stunning scenarios. And I didn't come down here to give you indigestion tonight after your dinner. That's not why I came. But it is stunning when you think that we are witnessing the degradation of the greatest country in the world. And this president has only been in office something like 16 months. 16 months. It's absolutely stunning. In the midst of all this, we've suffered repeated terrorist attacks here on U.S. soil. Do you remember the Arkansas Marine Recruiting Station? And we were told, oh no, that wasn't a terrorist. Don't worry about that. That isn't what happened. Just go back to sleep. After that came Fort Hood. It was a little tougher to say it wasn't a terrorist. But that's what the president did. Remember, the president came out. He said, don't jump to conclusions here. Oh, really? The report that was put out about the Fort Hood terrorist, because he is a terrorist, the report that came out didn't even use the word terrorist. He gunned down 14 innocent Americans on a military base at Fort Hood in Texas. And on his business cards were the words, Soldier of Allah. And we're not supposed to call these people terrorists? That's exactly what they are. After that, we had the infamous underwear bomb. Who remembers that on Christmas Day? This fruitcake was about to take down 300 innocent people over Detroit. And but for his clumsiness or whatever happened, thank God, an absolute tragedy was averted. Because less than 50 minutes of interrogation from this foreign-born terrorist who had been training with radical clerics from Yemen and training with Al-Qaeda, after less than 50 minutes of interrogation, this terrorist was given the rights, privileges, and immunities of an American citizen under the Constitution. And this happened without any consultation with the FBI. Nobody thought they should contact the CIA. Nobody thought to contact counterterrorism. Nobody thought to contact Homeland Security. Nobody even contacted HIG, a triage unit set up specifically for this kind of situation. You know who was contacted? Eric Holder, the Attorney General. He's the one who said, oh sure, tell him he has the right to remain silent and give him a taxpayer-subsidized lawyer. Well, this is to the detriment of our future safety. In fact, it was just a few weeks ago when Steve and I were in the chamber. It was the last vote before we headed out of Dodge to come back out of our districts, and we couldn't believe the bill that came in response to the underwear bomber out of the White House and from Speaker Pelosi. And this was the bill. It said that the bill was for the purpose of expanding the civil rights of terrorists. Our